Today we're on video 9 of 10 of the Hearing God series, where we'll be looking at step 3 of the positioning yourself to hear God speak. It's step 3 of 3, and it's seek direction. Our focus scripture today is, I am the good shepherd, I know my sheep, and my sheep know me, out of John 10:14. And we'll quickly review the Hearing God series videos. Video 1 is, what is spiritual discernment? Video 2, should we seek God's face? Video 3, does God speak? And 4, did God speak? Video 5, are you in covenant? This one's kind of a long video. I think it's 41 minutes, but it is very important information for staying in covenant with God, for establishing that covenant relationship and staying in covenant. Video 6 is the enemy's voice, and video 7 is get alone with God as step 1 of 3 in this 3-step process of positioning oneself to hear God's voice. Video 8 is forgiveness and authority, which is step 2 of the process. And today we're looking at step 3. Before we get to step 3, I want to just recap step 1 and 2, because you have to do these steps before you seek God on direction, so you're sure you're hearing from God. Step 1 is get alone with God, be in a distraction-free setting, and ask God to bind the enemy. Step 2 is have a sincere forgiveness conversation with God, and ask God to take back any spiritual authority that you gave away. Now, step 3 is seeking direction. And this is the easiest step in the process, in my opinion, but it may be the one that requires the most investment of time, because this is where you're learning to discern God's voice, because you're asking him a question. So I have created this question, God, do you want me to step right or left? That is the question that I use and that I teach others to use as they are seeking God for direction. Now, his answer can be to move in any direction, or to be still, or to sit down. His answer can be anything, but God, you want me to step right or left? All right, and then you're going to listen for his answer, and once you hear his answer, you're going to move in that direction. Okay, and you should feel the peace of obedience of having stepped deliberately with God. Okay, you can also ask God why he had you step in that direction. His answer may provide insight how God is intentionally leading you onto the path that he has for you specifically. Okay, so it can be this simple: God, why did you have me move in that direction? If you're not hearing God at this point, it is probably because you have not gone through the entire steps that I have listed, and that you have to be in covenant relationship first. And that's why I mentioned, you must watch that video on the covenant, so that you understand that you are in covenant relationship, where you have only one God and you obey him wholeheartedly. Okay, so but this does take an investment of time to learn to discern God's voice, because the enemy has a voice, and we talked about that in a previous video. As you start any new endeavor, though, whether it's weight loss, dance classes, a sports participation, whatever, there is an investment of time as you learn how to do the process. Okay, and so this is the most important process that you need to learn how to do, and that is to learn to discern God's voice. So on this page, I'm going to read this entire passage to you, and highlight some of the things that I think you need to hear as you are seeking God's direction. It's from John 10, verses 1 through 14, and it's titled The Good Shepherd and His Sheep. Very truly, I tell you, Pharisees, anyone who does not enter the sheep pen by the gate, but climbs in by some other way, is a thief and a robber. The one who enters by the gate is the shepherd of the sheep. The gatekeeper opens the gate for him, and the sheep listen to his voice. He calls his own sheep by name and leads them out. When he has brought out all his own, he goes on ahead of them, and his sheep follow him because they know his voice. But they will never follow a stranger. In fact, they will run away from him because they do not recognize a stranger's voice. Jesus used this figure of speech, but the Pharisees did not understand what he was telling them. Therefore, Jesus said again, very truly, I tell you, I am the gate for the sheep. All who have come before me are thieves and robbers, but the sheep have not listened to them. I am the gate. Whoever enters through me will be saved. They will come in and go out and find pasture. The thief comes only to steal and kill and destroy. I have come that they may have life and have it to the full. I am the good shepherd. The good shepherd lays down his life for the sheep. The hired hand is not the shepherd and does not own the sheep. So when he sees the wolf coming, he abandons the sheep and runs away. Then the wolf attacks and the flock and scatters it. The man runs away because he is a hired hand and cares nothing for the sheep. I am the good shepherd. I know my sheep, and my sheep know me. Now, I'm going to just go back and look at these few verses that I have in different colors on the screen. The gatekeeper opens the gate for him, and the sheep listen to his voice. Okay? The sheep listen to his voice. This whole Hearing God series is about listening to the voice of God. Jesus is God. He is the good shepherd, and we are to listen to his voice. He calls his own sheep by name and leads them out. So God knows you intimately, and he wants you to know him also intimately. He wants you to know him intimately. All right? When he has brought out all of his own, he goes on ahead of them, and his sheep follow him because they know his voice. But they will never follow a stranger. In fact, they will want to run away from him because they do not recognize a stranger's voice. So as you learn to discern God's voice, the voice of the enemy will become obvious to you when you hear the enemy speak to you in the spiritual realm. Okay? The enemy does have a voice, and he will try to manipulate you. He's a liar. He's not lying to God. He's lying to you. Okay? And so you have to be able to discern the difference between the voice of God and the voice of the enemy. And we'll talk about testing the spirits next. But I want to go down here to this. The hired hand is not the shepherd. Let me get a pointer here. The hired hand is not the shepherd and does not own the sheep. Listen to me. He was talking to the Pharisees, the teachers of the law. He's talking about the pastors in the church. Now, I'm sorry, I don't mean to include every pastor as not caring, but you cannot trust the pastor who has a job, and particularly in the church today, where they're being paid to say certain things so that they build the church audience, okay? So there's a lot of entertainment that goes on in the church. I'm telling you, pastors don't even know who God is. They don't. They'll say things like, "There's two gods. One sitting next to the other one on a throne in heaven. That one is the son of the other." They just don't know who God is. And so I'm saying to you, the hired hand is not the shepherd and does not own the sheep. So, or actually, Jesus said that. I'm repeating it. So, when he sees the wolf coming, he abandons the sheep and runs away. Then the wolf attacks the flock and scatters it. The man runs away because he is a hired hand and cares nothing for the sheep. All right, I think that's probably enough on that subject. So now we're at testing the spirits, and I want to say this. Testing the spirits is not about testing a false teacher. It is about testing the voice of the enemy against the voice of God. And I want to say this too. A false teacher can answer this question that is given to us in this passage of 1 John 4, 1 through 3. They can answer that in the affirmative, that Jesus Christ did come in the flesh, and still be giving you wrong information. This is how we test the spirits, and this is the way that God gave us to test the spirits. So evidently, these spirits cannot answer correctly that Jesus Christ did come in the flesh, because that is the way that God has set this up. He has given us this method. This is not something that I created and I'm telling you to do. This is the way that God has created for us to test the spirits. Okay? I'm just going to read it here on the bottom of the screen on the left-hand side. Dear friends, do not believe every spirit, but test the spirits to see whether they are from God. Now, again, I've got this highlighted. Do not believe every spirit. We're talking about spirits in the spiritual realm, and we've talked in a previous video about the enemy has a voice, evil spirits, demons have a voice. I showed you the scriptures where the evil spirits and demons talk to Jesus, and I promise you that's what they're doing in the spiritual realm with you, that is giving them the opportunity to kill, steal, and destroy in your life. So do not believe every spirit, but test the spirits to see whether they are from God, because many false prophets have gone out into the world. See, they've heard from a enemy presence, and they have gone out and taught false doctrines, have gone out and brought a false word from the Lord, because it's not from the Lord. It's from an enemy presence who is counterfeiting God's voice in the spiritual realm. And so if the person doesn't know God intimately and doesn't recognize his voice, then they're going to be deceived. All right? So this is how you can recognize the Spirit of God. Every spirit that acknowledges that Jesus Christ has come in the flesh is from God. But every spirit that does not acknowledge Jesus is not from God. This is the spirit of the Antichrist, which you have heard is coming, and even now is already in the world. So, evil spirits cannot hear your silent prayer voice or your spirit voice. You must ask the question aloud and listen for the spirit voice answer. If the answer is no or something evasive, there is an evil spirit present trying to deceive you. Do not speak to the evil spirit. Speak only to God, asking him to silence and evict the enemy. Okay? But if you've gone through the process of step 1, which was asking God to bind the enemy, then this shouldn't be an issue. But at any time that you are uncertain about what you are hearing in the spiritual realm from God, then you need to ask this question. And the question is, did Jesus Christ come in the flesh? So I'm going to do it right now just to give you an example. Again, I'm going to say it out loud, and then I'm going to listen for the spirit voice answer. Please don't think that there is something mystical about this. This is how God has designed this. And so I'm just going to ask, did Jesus Christ come in the flesh? Okay, and I heard immediately, absolutely, I am the Lord your God, as the answer that came when I asked that question. Now, if I had heard something evasive or no, something other than an affirmative, definite yes, then I would be suspect that there is an enemy presence there, and there would likely be an enemy presence there if I heard something other than the affirmative coming from God. Now, I recognize God's voice because I've been hearing his voice for a long time, but I have invested a lot of time in listening to God and knowing him. But he wants it for you too. So don't think that this is just something that's for me. If he wants this for you, he is going to make himself known to you. Okay? And, again, always ask God to bind the enemy. before any conversation with him, because the enemy does want to deceive you. Okay? So I put this slide in here, and I'm just going to read it so that I stay focused. God is not concerned with investing too much time with you. Stay in conversation until you have complete peace about moving forward in obedience. I can remember one time a woman telling me that God was too busy over in Egypt to take the time to listen to me. She meant it. She was sincere about it. That's not true. God is never concerned about investing too much time with you. He has all the time in the world. He can speak to everyone in the world at the same time. I don't know how he does it, but he does. And so don't be concerned about bringing everything before God. Spend as much time as you need to get to know God. He has no problem investing time with you. Okay? Secondly, God does not want you to move outside of his direction. He doesn't need your great ideas or another way of doing things once you're already out in the battlefield. Okay? And I just use battlefield as a term, but once you've already moved outside of listening to him, he doesn't need you to suddenly do something a different way than what you and he have already discussed. If you have an idea, then stop and talk to God about it. Okay? Because just like Satan did in the garden, he made Adam and Eve believe that, maybe it was a better idea to go and eat the forbidden fruit. Okay? So talk to God and learn his voice. Ask God specific questions like, do you want me to move right or left? Okay? That's a very definitive question. And you can ask him why questions too. If he thinks that you don't need to know the why, he will tell you so. Also, you can ask God about anything. He's not afraid to talk about sex, addictions, or longings. He's not afraid to talk about anything. And there should be nobody on the planet that you can talk to more intimately than you can God. Okay? Because God is all-knowing. He already knows anything that you think is weird about you. He already knows it. So don't be ashamed to go to God. You can talk to him about anything. So coming up in video 10, we're going to actually walk through the process of hearing God. I'm going to walk you through all the steps. I'm going to put this worksheet that's on the slide on the right-hand side. I'm going to bring each of those questions before you step by step, and I'm going to create intentional places where you can pause the video to have the conversation with God. Now, normally you won't need a video to do this with, but for the first time of hearing God, you may be more comfortable with me walking you through the steps, and I'm completely fine with that. That was God's intent with making this a 10 video series. So we'll see you tomorrow and walk through the process.